This video is for educational and historical purposes. I highly recommend you do not try this at home because you could find yourself in violation of federal laws and you could have someone knocking on your door from agencies such as the ATF. Now, what I'm going to show you is a mock-up here of a World War I ANZAC jam tin grenade, also known as a jam tin bomb. Now, these were made primarily in 1915, early in World War I. Very few hand grenades were in the hands of the troops. When the ANZAC forces, the Australian and New Zealand forces, landed in Gallipoli in Turkey to try to open a new front in that area, it was considered a sideshow. They were not given sufficient munitions, weapons, and few, if any, grenades. According to some of the historical remembrances, writings of survivors of Gallipoli, they did not even see an actual hand grenade till after they left Gallipoli. Now, the shortage of hand grenades was not the same for the Turks. The Turks had large numbers of hand grenades and used them very liberally against the ANZAC forces. So, being the ingenious troops that they were, they decided to make their own in the field with what they had available, which was predominantly tin cans, primarily jam tins, and also cans from condensed milk. Now, the basic model, if you want to just think of it at that, was a tin can filled with gun cotton and some type of shrapnel material. That material could be nails, pieces of barbed wire, spent casings. It could also be pieces of other cans that were cut up or broken up. And also, liberal use was made of shrapnel from the area from exploding Turkish shells. They would send out troops each day to gather up the shrapnel and send it back to the little grenade factory to be returned to the Turkish forces. Now, each grenade was set off the same way. Just a piece of time fuse and a blasting cap. To ignite it, they just used a match or a lit cigarette. Now, the contents of the can, the lid was put back in place and then it was covered with clay. That way, when the grenade was tossed, it wouldn't spill its contents in the air. Now, another variation that I came across for keeping the contents inside was they would punch holes on the sides of the can. Here I have two sets of parallel holes, and they would run wire through those holes to keep the lid in place for the same purpose. They would bend over the ends of the wire so the wire would not fall out. Now, these also got more advanced as time went on, and they would use a dual can system or dual cylinder system where they had a smaller can inside a larger can. That smaller can was filled with explosives, and according to their recounts, was typically amytal or dynamite. And then the space between the smaller can and the outer can was filled with shrapnel. Now, when the Australian government decided they should manufacture grenades for their troops, they took this design and they made their own. The number 8 and number 9 dual cylinder hand grenades. Now, the remembrances from the troops were on these grenades, the number 8s, the number 9s, and these, the jam tin grenades, was that they were rather unwieldy to use because they could get heavy and their shape was a little hard to throw, but they were extremely effective when they were gotten into the enemy trenches. Now, This same design was resurrected almost 100 years later in Iraq by the insurgents during Operation Iraqi Freedom. But the most common that you would see there was a soda can filled with explosive and shrapnel with a basic rudimentary way to ignite it, or to detonate it. And the tops of the cans were covered with tar to keep the initiation system from falling out and to keep the contents from falling out. Now, as I stated before, this is for educational and historical purposes, primarily meant for reenactors so they can better explain to people that ask questions at different events they're at, and maybe to put together for themselves so that they can show them. And as I said, don't try this at home. You will violate a law. Now, for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and militia movements, always remember, essayons.